And we are live. I'm very excited about this webinar. Thank you for joining. And so while people are joining the webinar, just if you want in the live chat, throw in where you're from, what you want to hear on this webinar, any expectations, anything you want to learn, just throw them into the live chat. Don't be shy. And while people are coming on, we will just wait patiently. We're about 2 minutes early, so people are starting to join. Thank you for joining. Again, throw in the live chat where you're dialing in from. I am dialing in from actually New Jersey, Fort Lee, New Jersey, right over the GW Bridge. We at Skubana, we have offices in both Soho, New York, and New Jersey. Lizzie, where are you dialing in from?
I'm dialing in from Houston, Texas. So TaxJar is a fully distributed company. We're all remote across the U.S.
That's awesome. And how do you guys manage it all? Like, what software do you use to piece it all together?
Yeah, we have a couple different tools. We use Basecamp primarily. It's kind of our hub for everything communication-wise, document-wise. And then we do a lot of Zoom videos. We just keep
Yep. I love Basecamp.
Yeah.
And I like the CEO as well, Jason Fried. He wrote some really good books, and he keeps my team, at least on the e-commerce side, all on the same page, and we have different teams, and it's just a great, fun software.
Yeah, we really like it. We've been on it for almost a year now. It was a really good switch.
Cool. Where is everyone dialing in from? So we have a lot to cover today. I think it's best that we get started because there's so much meat in this presentation. Tax certainly is not every seller's favorite topic in the world, but I think at this point, it's a necessary evil, and that's why I thought having Lizzie on with TaxJar to go through just everything that you'd want to know about taxes could benefit our audience and your audience, and we can collaborate and just from a seller's perspective, along from you, I consider you a domain expert at this point. So I think there's a lot that we can do to collaborate.
Yeah, we're excited to be here.
Cool. So without further ado, I'm going to get started. We have someone dialing in from Pakistan. I've never seen that one before. People want to know the length of this webinar. It is going to be a longer than typical. Typically, we're about 45 to 50 minutes in webinars. We're going to probably go over. Would you agree, Lizzie?
Yeah.
So we're going to definitely go over. So I want to set that expectation up front, but I'm telling you it's going to be valuable. You do not want to mess with the IRS. And certainly right now in this very volatile time with taxes and with the new rulings, which we're going to go into today, you do not want to miss a beat. So I do suggest you stay on for the entire time. This is what we're going to cover today. So we're going to go through the basics. We're going to go through the new Supreme Court ruling that has changed everything. We're going to talk about TaxJar, how they're helping merchants today to automate this process, and then any questions that people may have. I can speak on behalf of both Lizzie and myself. We are not CPAs or not certified to give tax advice, so we can point you in the right direction if you get into the weeds with certain questions. But I would tell you that Liz knows enough to be dangerous, and I have lost enough hair to be dangerous. So that's what we're going to cover today. Let's go through your intro.
Yeah, great. So really excited to be here, guys. My name is Lizzie. I'm the CMO at TaxJar. So I come to you guys. I have about 15 years of experience in e-commerce, selling across multiple channels, Amazon, Etsy, eBay, the whole Shopify, the whole multi-channel life. I filed sales tax returns in California and Texas for a lot of years. So as many of you guys know, it can be a really frustrating process. So I know exactly what you're going through, and I'm here to help kind of simplify it and make it easier for you. I've talked to thousands of sellers, pros, auditors. We talk to the states all the time as TaxJar. We're here as a technology company to help make taxes easy for you. But as Chad said, I'm not a CPA. We're here to help you make informed decisions, but we're not going to give you specific recommendations on your business and what you should do. We have a number of really great sales tax experts that we work with at TaxJar that we can point you in the right direction if you have more questions. But I'm here to help you figure out what is Nexus, what does the new sales tax kind of landscape look like, and guide you through as much as I can.
Great. And for TaxJar?
A little bit about TaxJar. If you're unfamiliar with TaxJar, or maybe you've heard of us and don't know exactly what we do, our clear mission is to make e-commerce easier for everyone. So whether that's you as a seller, you as a developer for a company, an e-commerce company, or if you're a CPA themselves, Anyone can use us, and we have a couple different solutions that we'll talk about a little bit later on in the presentation. But we're here to help everyone make e-commerce easier, from the content to understanding it to actually managing it. So just wanted to give a little intro on who we are.
And yep, I'm Chad Rubin, founder or co-founder of Skubana. I also happen to run an e-commerce business called Think Crucial. We have about 1,000 SKUs. We're on about 20 different channels. So you can imagine the problems that come along with selling on 20 different channels. I'm also a top Amazon seller. I wrote a book called Cheaper, Easier, Direct, which is really my blueprint around how I created my business across these 20 different channels. Of course, no surprise, it's on Amazon. And I've been burdened by a lot of these tax issues that have come up, and I'm happy to talk about it from a seller's perspective, which is kind of why I'm facilitating today, moving this conversation along. And just a little bit about Skubana. Really, we connect to all these different channels, and we help you pretty much know what your profit is across every channel, no matter how you fulfill, whether you're FBA or off FBA. We can predict these critical trends to automate purchase orders that are created. So we essentially help you make more money and then reduce some of your expenses on the bottom line. Bingo, bango, bongo. Let's move on. So just lastly, before we really get started, is we're actually hosting an event called Accelerate. It's skubana.com/accelerate. And we're going to be giving out promo codes for this event for $250 off. And that's for this webinar for people dialing in. I'm definitely appreciative for everyone to spend some time with us today and to dig into this really awesome topic of taxes. But anyway, check out that bit.ly link. Would love to have you there. And it's really built for sellers by sellers. No vendors are speaking. It's really around high volume brands dropping tactical information to help you take your business to the next level. And it's the largest e-commerce workshop in the United States. Cool. So what is sales tax, Lizzie? Please take it away.
All right, I'll start it off. So, as Chad mentioned in the agenda, we're going to go through a lot of sales tax, get you up to speed on all the basics and everything you need to know. So we'll start with what is sales tax, and then we'll move into different things you need to know to help manage and really get your sales tax under control. So the first thing to think about and kind of understand when you're approaching sales tax is a lot different than a lot of other taxes you may know. So you may be thinking about income tax, how it's managed at a federal level. Sales tax is way different, and this is the reason why it's so much more complicated, is the fact that it's managed at the state level. So not every state in the US actually has sales tax laws. So you may have shopped in a certain state and not been charged sales tax and maybe been surprised. If you're looking at the map here on the right, all of the green states are the states that currently have a sales tax law, and the white states are not. So there's 46 different states that are collecting sales tax. What that means for you as a seller or as a merchant or as a developer is that you need to figure out how to comply with sales tax according to 46 different sets of laws. 46 different states can define how they want products and shipping and all of that to be taxable. And they can also define their own rates. So that's kind of the most common thing people understand, is that a rate is different in every state. And so that also means if you're managing sales tax in a number of these states, you also have different due dates. So these states, it's not like income tax or on April 15th, everybody files. When you're filing sales tax, depending on the frequency with which you file, your due dates are different for every single state. So this is just to start it off. If you're thinking about, you're worried the IRS is going to come after you, it's not IRS, it's state level, but it's really managed at that state level, and we're going to break it down what all these things mean for you.
And by the way, when those states come after you, it is not fun or pretty. And again, I don't know when the best time to talk about my experience has been, but I did amnesty when it was offered. I think it was probably towards I want to say the beginning of this year, maybe, if my memory serves me correctly. And right before I got into amnesty, I had 2 states come after me. And then luckily I filed for amnesty, which means that you are in the get out of jail free zone. So I'm still working through some of those state issues. And again, I'm happy to talk more about it as we progress.
Yeah, that'll be great insight. So I don't want to scare anyone with that slide. I mean, just figuring out how you need to manage it is the first step, but it really is, we're here to be able to make it simple and help you guide you through it. So the first thing to remember when you're running a business, especially if you're running an e-commerce business where you have sales tax obligation, is that sales tax should be a pass-through tax. And it is a pass-through tax, but you should manage it for your company as a pass-through tax. So what I mean by that is you are essentially an agent of the state that is collecting sales tax from a customer and then remitting it back to the state. You should not be paying sales tax out of your pocket, and you shouldn't be taking on the sales tax liability by having to pay that or any kind of risk on behalf of not collecting it from your customers. So make sure you think about that. It's not a profitable part of your business, but it also shouldn't be taking anything from your bottom line. Pass through the tax from the customer to the state.
Yeah, so that means that essentially if you're in Seller Central and you're just on Amazon, you should be definitely activating tax collection on the back end, right?
Yep.
And then if you're on Shopify as well, you should be essentially also collecting that upfront so that you're not having to foot the bill.
Yep, we'll walk you through that. So the first thing you need to figure out when you go into Amazon or any of those channels is where do you start collecting? This is how you determine where you start collecting. So if you're thinking right now, do I have to collect in all 46 states? The answer is no. You have to collect sales tax where you have sales tax nexus, and we're going to talk about a little bit what that is. So sales tax nexus is defined as where you have a significant presence or a connection to a state. And each state defines it differently, but generally the states kind of agree on these simple, significant presence drivers here. So if you have a home office, for example, that will give you sales tax nexus in a state, and it's pretty undisputable. If you have an affiliate, if you have a temporary business, an employee in a state, those things also give you nexus. A lot of these are physical drivers for nexus. If you have inventory stored in a warehouse, so this triggers a lot of sellers to be surprised because they're not sure about Amazon FBA inventory. According to many of the states, the laws state that if you have inventory stored in a warehouse shipping to customers, you do have sales tax nexus. And then the one thing here that we'll get into in a minute is economic nexus. So that's a new thing as a result of the Supreme Court. Now the states are saying if you make a certain amount of money by shipping product to our customers or a number of products shipped to the customers, you have sales tax nexus. So we'll dive a little deeper into that, but this is just to kind of take a look at. You only need to collect and remit sales tax in states where you have it. So as I mentioned, FBA is the most common surprise for multi-channel sellers that are selling on Amazon. If you look here on the map on the left, these are the states where Amazon has FBA warehouses. So there's warehouses that are for fulfillment and there's warehouses that are sorting. Right now, only warehouses that are actually fulfilling and shipping to customers are what drives Nexus. So if you're new to Amazon and you're new to this concept, you are able to see all of the information within Seller Central on the inventory event detail report, which will tell you exactly where your particular inventory is being stored. But also if you sign up for a free trial of TaxJar, we tell you that automatically so you don't have to look up the codes and deal with Excel or anything like that. But this is the most common surprise. If you're interested, I'm not going to get too deep into this Amazon, but if you're interested in learning more about it, I highly recommend checking out the TaxJar blog. I put a screenshot there on the right, and you can take a look at more Amazon specific content around inventory nexus and FBA.
And that's pretty cool that you guys actually calculate where you have Nexus and FBA locations. Are you also tracking when there's movement from one FBA distribution center to the other?
So we're only tracking what's actually being shipped out when it's purchased. So if someone range, if it's sitting in an inventory until it actually gets shipped out to customers, that's when the Nexus is triggered.
Got it. Cool.
All right, so I'm going to take a break in the one-on-one content, but I'm going to talk a little bit about economic nexus, which I mentioned a few slides earlier. So you may have heard about Wayfair or South Dakota, and you may have seen it in the news and all over, and it's difficult to understand what it is. So once you've understood what sales tax nexus is, this enables you to kind of understand what's going on with South Dakota and Wayfair in this situation. So what happened was, previous to this law, the main triggers for sales tax nexus were physical requirements. So having a brick and mortar store, having employees, being located in a state, and that was kind of the norm for sales tax nexus. What South Dakota did was they created a law that said, regardless if you have physical presence, if you're doing a large economic activity in our state, we're going to say that that constitutes sales tax nexus. And they define that as making over $100,000 in gross sales in their state, specifically, not overall for your business, but in South Dakota, or if you're shipping 200 or more transactions in a year into South Dakota. And they said that is what defines sales tax nexus in South Dakota, in addition to the physical. Now we have an economic layer. And then what they did is they followed up by suing Wayfair and Newegg and a couple other e-commerce retailers that were not collecting sales tax in the state. So this went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and what you've heard about recently is the ruling was in favor of South Dakota, and the Supreme Court essentially legalized the idea of economic nexus and being able to enforce that as an economic trigger for sales tax nexus. So if you keep going here, so what does this mean for sellers, and kind of boiling it down, what this did is made economic nexus constitutional. So a lot of states had previous economic nexus laws, but they really had no way to enforce those. And so having this Supreme Court decision made it so that states are able to enforce those. So what this means is that in addition to the physical nexus that you're managing, you now have to figure out if your business meets economic nexus in all of the states that have it. So currently only 23 states have laws on the books for economic nexus, and we're tracking that and we keep everyone prepared, and I'll show you how you can kind of manage that more scalably in a second. But it's important to kind of figure out where your business meets economic nexus now that this is a new layer of triggering sales tax nexus.
And does TaxJar help with that, figuring that out?
Yeah, we'll tell you exactly what to do in just a few minutes. So most merchants, when they hear about South Dakota and what's going on, the first question they have is, what do I do now? So these are the recommendations that we have for folks. Number one is to figure out where you stand. So if you're running a business and you're complying with sales tax and you have sales tax obligations, it's really important to figure out where you have nexus, and especially with economic nexus. So figure out how many transactions and how many sales you are doing into every state, and then take a look at the economic nexus laws that are available in those states and see if you exceed them. I'll show you how to do that automatically in just a second. But that's the first thing, is figure out where you stand and be up to date. The second thing is make sure you stay up to date. So I would recommend subscribing to the TaxJar blog or any other reliable source of content out there that you know of that will keep you updated specifically on economic nexus changes. So as I mentioned, there's only 23 states that have current economic nexus laws in place, but that number is changing pretty much every day. All the states are, seeing what's happening with Wayfair in South Dakota and jumping on the bandwagon. They want a piece of that revenue. They know, all this stuff that's going on with e-commerce and Amazon, and if they can get their cut, they're coming in for it. So expect a lot of change, expect a lot of ambiguity as all that shakes out, but make sure you kind of lean on a resource of someone, whether it's going to be you or you lean on a tool or provider like TaxJar to be able to keep you updated as everything happens. And then lastly, don't wait around. There's a lot of conversation around, maybe the marketplaces will handle it for me, or maybe it'll go to Congress and we'll be taking, a different action there. What we're seeing here and what our CPA advisors have told us on a couple other, different webinars we've had, is that you really shouldn't wait around. It's time to take action. You have all the information, the tools are out there to help you make this easy and automate it. So jump on, get it done. It's not a revenue driving part of your business. So don't wait around and kind of let this linger in your head. So we all kind of have to realize that for a while, e-commerce had an edge with not having to deal with sales tax, compared to a brick and mortar situation, but we have to accept this as a part of e-commerce business. So as part of running a business, as part of making these sales, it's just something we have to accept, comply, and move on. It's really going to get you farther in the long run by figuring it out and automating it than to kind of keep spending on this.
And isn't Amazon automatically collecting in Washington now for certain sales?
Yeah, so that's an interesting case. Amazon is collecting in a couple different states. It's part of the Marketplace Facilitator Acts. And what we've seen is it actually complicates sales tax a lot more than you might think. So because Amazon is collecting, Amazon only knows what business you're doing on Amazon. They don't know what's going on with the rest of your business. So if you're like a lot of e-commerce sellers and you're running a multi-channel business, you then still have to file sales tax for the other areas of your business. If you sell on your own website, if you sell on eBay, etc. And if you do that, you actually have to then create a deduction within your report in filing your own sales tax to deduct what Amazon has sold. So it doesn't really get you off the hook if Amazon starts collecting for you, because Nexus is about your whole business, not just a specific channel. So there's still a lot more reporting. In addition to, Washington specifically has a B&O filing that's separate that Amazon's not doing. So there's a little, it's great that some of these marketplace providers are getting in and kind of trying to help, but it doesn't necessarily simplify it as much as it could.
Yep.
So what does this mean for your TaxJar customers? So if you're not using TaxJar, obviously I recommend it. I work there. But people are looking at us saying, okay, you guys work in sales tax. What's your perspective? So there's a lot of unknowns. There's going to be a lot of change, as I mentioned. A lot of these states, new stuff is going to happen all the time. We're more than ready. So I'll show you in the next slide kind of what we've done and kind of how we've been the first to market with trying to solve this for folks and manage these changes. But we've already launched a sales and transactions checker. So what this is, as I mentioned, the first step of figuring out exactly where you stand in economic nexus, knowing how many sales and transactions you're making in every state. We launched this tool. We made it completely free. So you start a TaxJar trial, click on the tool, and it'll tell you exactly where your sales tax, where your economic nexus is for your business. And you can run this, if you're a customer, you can run it as many times as you want. If it's just the first time you're using it, you have a 30-day free trial. But this is really, this is our first step at showing you guys, we're an agile, really quick company. We see what's going on in the market, and our software is built in a modern way that we're able to launch features like this and adapt to the market and adapt to all these changes so that we make sure that we have all of our customers covered no matter what happens with Economic Nexus. So I definitely recommend, if you're wondering where you stand, to try that checker out. Are my products even taxable? So we're going to go a little bit backwards to that Sales Tax 101 that we started with. So now that we've passed the South Dakota information, so the next thing you need to figure out is what if your products that you're selling are actually taxable. So the first thing is that people ask is shipping taxable? And that's a tricky question because shipping can be taxable and not taxable. Again, depends on what state you're in and where you live and where you're shipping to. This is a quick map. We have a lot of this content on our blog. The next thing we have to figure out with taxability, keep going, is generally tangible items are usually taxable. Services are usually not taxable. There's definitely exceptions to this, and I'll go over some of those. But generally thinking about what you're selling, if you're putting it in a box and you're shipping it with Amazon FBA or your Magento store or anything like that, generally it's taxable. So I'll show you some examples. So if you are selling pianos, you're a piano store, you're selling pianos, you charge sales tax, that's a tangible good. However, if you start selling piano lessons, you don't charge sales tax on that. Generally that's a service, and so you're not required to charge sales tax. So very similar ideas, but different taxability issues. If you're selling a lamp, so again, that fits in a box, ships in a box, generally it's taxable. Yes, it's taxable. But then we get to something like clothing, which a lot of sellers are selling clothing and clothing goods. Clothing is actually taxable and not taxable depending on what state you're in. So for example, in New York, there's exemptions for clothing under a certain amount. And so your clothing may be taxable depending on how much you're selling it for if it's shipping to New York. Food is something that, grocery items and prepared foods can be taxable and not taxable, or taxed at a reduced rate in certain states. So if you're selling food, it's really important for you to look specifically at what you're selling to figure out your taxability. And then our favorite thing is the bagel. So for example, in New York, if you're selling bagels, this right here as a whole bagel is not taxable. So this is a grocery item and it's exempt. However, once you slice the bagel in half, it becomes a prepared food. And now all of a sudden this product is taxable. So this is just to kind of illustrate the nuances between sales tax law and figuring out exactly what your product is, if it's taxable, because something like a bagel is taxable in one situation, and then all of a sudden it's not when you slice it in half. So
that's crazy.
The bagel. And then digital goods. So a lot of sellers these days are selling downloads, digital goods. Those can be taxable and non-taxable depending on the state you're in. So that's another tricky one you should figure out. All right, so now you've figured out where you need to collect sales tax. You figured out if your product is actually taxable. The next thing to figure out is where you're actually going to have to collect sales tax for. So the golden rule of sales tax is that you collect sales tax when the item sold is shipped to a state where you have Nexus. So that's really important. Again, if you're wondering, do I have to collect sales tax in every single state out there? No, only when it is shipped to a state where you have sales tax Nexus. All right, so here's an example to illustrate that. If you're shipping an item within your home state, so you're based in Akron, Ohio, you're selling some widgets and you're selling them to Lakewood, Ohio. Because this is an in-state sale, you do collect sales tax, and that is the correct thing to do. However, if you're selling these widgets and you're shipping them to Massachusetts, because you don't have Nexus in Massachusetts, in this case, in this example, this person doesn't, you do not collect sales tax.
You're talking about sales tax Nexus, not economic Nexus right now, correct?
So if you don't have sales tax Nexus in Massachusetts, meaning you don't have any physical presence or economic presence or that stuff, Massachusetts is just a state that exists, and you're shipping a product to there, it's totally fine to not charge sales tax on that purchase.
Got it.
The minute you start doing business in Massachusetts and creating a presence is when you need to start collecting on that sale. So here's a scenario, your business expands, you're now using FBA, you have your inventory stored in, for example, 5 states. So plus your home state, there's your 6 states that have Nexus. And you're complying with sales tax in all 6 states. Here's how this kind of scenario changes. So you now have your business and your 6 states of Nexus there on the left. If you ship to a customer in any of those 6 states, you collect sales tax. So that's how the sales tax Nexus has changed it. If you collect to any other state that you do not have a presence in, you have no sales tax Nexus in, and again, you do not have to collect sales tax on that purchase. So for a lot of sellers, depending on how big of a seller you are, you may be collecting in a lot of states if you're doing a lot of business, but likely you're probably not collecting in every single state, probably not collecting in every single FBA state. It really depends on your volume and where you're at.
And were you guys, so did you see a lot of uptick in in the amnesty program? Like, what was your opinion on that, if any?
The amnesty program was really interesting. I think it would probably be really interesting to see if it happened again now that economic nexus is at play. We didn't see a ton of folks that actually took advantage of that program. I think a lot of folks were still kind of getting started with sales tax.
They were on the sidelines waiting to see what would happen.
What happened? A lot of folks are waiting out for the Supreme Court decision with the waiver in South Dakota as well. So I think it'd be really interesting if the states decided to run another amnesty program. Certain states have amnesty programs more often. That was kind of more consolidated effort.
Yeah, I can tell you that like aggressive states, in my opinion, would be like Washington, California, Pennsylvania. And if I actually didn't go through amnesty, it would have been more problematic for me because I mean, essentially you owe back taxes on unit shipped for how many years, but this gave me amnesty. And so anyway, it was a great program that I enrolled in. I think it was just being at the right place at the right time and just hopping on it immediately.
Yeah, it was definitely a great program, and I'm sure there'll be more in the future. There's also other programs for sellers if you missed that and you're wanting to comply and you have liabilities in the past. There's voluntary disclosures you can work with the state and kind of come up with a negotiation settlement anonymously to be able to.
That's cool.
Similar type of experience, not the same.
Yeah. Do accountants do that? Do they work on your behalf to do that?
Yep, we work with a sales tax accountant to do that. That's actually the next slide that we're getting into. So the next part is, how do you actually collect sales tax and how do you go about this? The steps to compliance. That's a lot of folks that are new to sales tax or just getting started and ask us is, where do I start? This is overwhelming. We want to kind of boil it down. We want to kind of give you some recommended steps in getting started. So the first thing is to comply in your home state. So if you're not collecting sales tax today, we really recommend starting in your home state. You really can't deny that you're doing business from them. Even if it's from your kitchen or from your bedroom, you're doing business in a state, so you need to start collecting there. So register for a sales tax license for the first part. You are actually not able to turn on or collect sales tax legally without a sales tax license. So don't go in Amazon and select a bunch of states. Amazon requires you to put in your license, so that kind of prevents that. But to know that you do not want to collect any sales tax until you've registered in the state.
And there's like over 2 million Amazon sellers. There's just some chatter happening in the chat box here. Would you suggest that, or I guess legally, if you have Nexus, you're supposed to be filing, but is there any position that TaxJar you hold in terms of, because the people are saying it wouldn't make economic sense to go through for 2 million Amazon sellers to move into this program. Any point of view on that?
Yeah, I'll get to that in just a few minutes because I have a slide on that. But yeah, it's a great question a lot of folks have. So then what you do in order to comply is after you've gotten your license, you enable sales tax collection, then the state will tell you a date when you need to file and pay when the due date rolls around, and then that's what you do. It's pretty straightforward. Once you've got your home state going, then we recommend branching out into new states. So if it's overwhelming for you to start, just start with your home state, get your feet wet there. But then take a look at the other places you have Nexus and start figuring out where you want to comply, which we'll talk about. So the question that you asked, Chad, is around, where should you register? What's that time in which, if I know I have sales tax or if I know I'm doing Amazon and had, previous liability, what's that time in which I need to comply? So it's really difficult for us to give a recommendation around that. It's a really tricky thing. And I totally understand, as a seller myself, like having that question and trying to figure out when is it time to comply. It really comes down to your individual risk tolerance. So as I talked about in the beginning, sales tax is a pass-through tax. You shouldn't be covering this for your customers unless for some reason you want that as part of your business. But it really should be a pass-through tax, and you should have that liability checked off in your books so that you're not worried about a state coming after you or anything happening. So that said, we recommend complying in any state that you have sales tax Nexus. But the other thing to think about, as sellers and small business owners ourselves, is the idea of materiality. So, for example, if you're doing FBA and you have sales tax in 13 different states, if you're tracking it with TaxJar or a different solution, you can see that, okay, there's materiality. If I owe $6 in Colorado, is that material to my business? If the state came after me and I had to pay penalties and fines and whatnot, would a $100 tax bill really break my business? If no, then it might not be worth it for you to go and comply and register and kind of manage this. If it is something that's material in your business, definitely I'd recommend doing that because it's really registering and complying is the only way to protect your business from that sales tax liability. But it's up to you to kind of determine what's your threshold. Is it I never want to have any risk. And if I owe $1 in the state, we have thousands of sellers that if they owe $1 in the state, they register, comply, and move on because they just don't want to deal with it. But there's folks that using TaxJar to kind of manage their liability and say, okay, I'm only going to wait till I get to a certain point, and then I'll start complying.
How are the states noticing that people have Nexus? Like, how would the state of Washington, let's just say, get my information?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways. Number one, they actually look on Amazon and can look at sellers and see that information and do some investigatory stuff there. Amazon actually, if you've been following stuff in the news, they actually a couple times specifically have given the states a list of all sellers in certain states. So this happened a couple times last year. They sent a note out to all their sellers and said, hey, we're giving all your information to Washington. You better be collecting, get your ducks in a row. And then Amazon themselves shares that information with the state. So as much as you want to kind of dig your head in the sand, we really don't recommend that because states know that this is a percentage of revenue that they're missing out on, and they're really eager to kind of find you and get that. So I don't want to scare people with that at all. That's not my intention, but I just want to be realistic in the fact that there's a lot of different ways out there that.
And I would assume the states are probably prioritizing it and triaging that list based on obviously based on what's to make them the most money. So they're not going to waste their efforts if you have a $6 Nexus. But if you have a $6 million Nexus or even a $60,000 Nexus, like those are numbers that are important to the state so they can pave the roads and hire people to clean the streets.
Yeah, and again, I recommend if you're in that situation, it's okay. Don't freak out. Like there are different ways that you can work with a sales tax expert to try and help mitigate, compliance and moving forward. So it's okay if you're in that position. There's a lot of folks that are in that position, and you can use TaxJar. We're a completely private company. We don't share any information with anyone, and so you can use TaxJar to figure out where you stand and kind of get it, gauge where you're at before you, determine how you want to comply and how you want to do it. But yeah, those are great questions. All right, so the last, almost last thing is how much do you charge for sales tax? So this is specifically, breaking down what goes into a sales tax rate. So if you know the rate where you live, for example, like if you go to the store and you know which rate you're going to be charged, that rate is actually not a specific single rate. That's a rate that is made up of a couple different things. So state taxes, local taxes, other taxes that are education, municipal district, jurisdiction level taxes. If you look there on the right, with our sales tax calculator on our site, you can kind of take a look at what actually goes into a rate wherever you're shipping something. The important thing to note here is that in a lot of states, you actually have to remit your sales tax back to the state based on those levels. So you can't just say, hey, Colorado, here's the lump sum that I collected, go deal with it. But the state will actually ask you to say, hey, how much do we owe of that sales tax is owed to the city of Centennial, et cetera. So we'll talk about how TaxJar specifically addresses that. That's what we were built for. But the first thing is determining when you know where you're at and you know where you're supposed to be collecting based on that ship to location. The first thing to figure out is if you are in an origin-based state or a destination-based state. So the reason this is important is knowing how to collect sales tax in your home state. There's two different kind of methods for this. One is an origin-based state, and this is where you collect the sales tax based on the seller's location. And so it is one rate for the entire state based on your home location. So for example, Texas is an origin-based state, where I'm in Houston, Texas. If I sell something to Dallas, I charge the Houston rate. That's just an origin-based state. It's pretty nice, but it's only for home state sellers. Destination-based states are another type of states like Colorado, where you actually collect the sales tax based on where the item is shipped. So you can't predict upfront what the rate is going to be because you don't know where you're going to sell your products to within that state, unless, for example, you have a crystal ball and you know exactly where you're shipping. So it gets really complicated when you're dealing with destination-based states because it's not based on your home state location, it's based on where it's shipped to. So if I was in Colorado and I shipped something from Denver to Aurora, then I have to know that Aurora rate ahead of time and all those things that go into it. The important thing to know here for a lot of sellers that are e-commerce is that you're considered a remote seller if you have sales tax nexus in a state that's not your home state. And remote sellers are always destination-based. So that's why if you've heard of folks that are complaining about doing a sales tax return in Texas, for example, for me, I live in Texas, it's not that big a deal because it's origin. But for an out-of-state seller to comply in Texas, they then have to report on every single city, county, jurisdiction for all those sales based on where they were shipped to. So remote sellers are always destination-based, but if you are new to sales tax and figuring out how your home state works, you need to figure out if you're destination or origin. And again, we have all this content on our blog, so if you're wondering it, just do a quick search and check out the TaxJar blog, and we'll tell you exactly what state you're in.
And there are some merchants on the, there's some chatter happening where people are saying that this will result in sellers switching from FBA to FBM. But I think that that wouldn't be the case just because economic nexus, it doesn't really matter if you have a presence in that state, it just matters if you sell into that state.
Yep.
Like a lot of our merchants at Skubana, we have an integration to Seller Fulfill Prime. And I guess people were doing that up until this announcement came out with Wayfair and the Supreme Court.
Yep, that's definitely one of the reasons why this has changed a lot of the e-commerce landscape. So, for example, this is just an example of origin state. You know, if you are in Irving and your collection is 8.25, you're collecting 6.5 for the state, Irving County rate plus Dallas. Yeah, that's what makes up your total rate of 8.25. And because you're shipping something to another state or another city, for example, Archer City, you collect that Irving rate. And then the next example is destination. So if you're in Stanford and you're shipping something to Buffalo, you're actually collecting everything relating to Buffalo rather than Stanford because it's destination and that's the destination of where the package is going. So we can keep moving through this. All right, the next question is, how often do you actually have to file? So this is a lot of, a lot of sellers ask this question when they get started with sales tax and they say, oh, we can file monthly, quarterly, annually, or fiscal annually, et cetera. And they say, oh, I want to do annually. The bad news is it's not up to you. So the state, when you register for a sales tax permit, they will assign you a specific filing frequency and tell you when you need to file. So the filing due dates are different for every state. They generally fall on the second half of the month. So sometimes they're on the 20th. Certain states are on the 31st. It really depends. And if you are not doing a lot of volume in a state, usually after 1 year, you can petition the state to move to a different filing frequency. So if you work quarterly, for example, you can say, I want to be annually next year. And depending on your sales, the state will help you do that. And the filing frequency generally is tied to the size of your business. So this is a typical scenario of an e-commerce business filing returns in 3 states. So if you're monthly in one state and you file on the 20th of the month, you may be quarterly in the next state and file every 3 months. And then the last state, you might be annually. So it's really important to keep track of all of this and make sure you avoid any kind of penalties associated with missing due dates. That's the frustrating part of dealing with sales tax. One important thing to note on the filing schedule before is that you can actually, certain states will actually give you an early filing discount or a timely filing discount, which actually a lot of times can pay for the cost of a service like TaxJar. So if you are managing it on time and making sure that you are, have it all organized, or using a service like TaxJar that does it all for you and keeps it organized, you can actually get a little bit of that sales tax money back just for keeping all your ducks in a row and actually complying.
I didn't know that they offer that.
No, certain states do. We have some blog posts around the states that do. A lot of times it can cover the cost of AutoFile, which is our automated filing product. So
cool. Kind
of no-brainer depending on your sales. And then the last thing is it's all about your sales data. So how you actually go about filing, you need to gather all your sales data across all of your channels. So this is what you said. You mentioned this earlier, Chad, in the beginning, that sales tax is not channel specific. It's for your entire business. So you need to figure out, okay, if I'm filing quarterly, I need my quarterly sales data from Amazon, from everything I sold there. I need my quarterly sales data from Shopify, from Etsy, from eBay. And you have to combine all that together to figure out what you need to pay the state. The state doesn't really care if you made a sale on Amazon versus Etsy. The state cares how much you made as a business. So you have to combine it all into a single source before you're able to file. And then once you've done that, if you're doing Excel, I feel you, it's a headache. I recommend using TaxJar to do this, but we'll combine it all for you and then put it in the format you need to file.
And what channels do you integrate with today? Like what marketplaces or shopping carts?
Yeah, so we have a number of different integrations, like most of the popular ones: Magento, Shopify, Amazon, Shopify Plus, Amazon FBA. We do Etsy, PayPal, Square, Stripe, Squarespace, and then we have a number of different third-party integrations. Also like Ecler, Zoe. We have a number of different third-party integrations.
So I'm just asking personally because I'm like, wait, I sell in 20 different channels. Obviously, I use Skubana, but like Home Depot, Groupon, Wayfair, Overstock, Newegg, Rakuten. I can keep going on and on, but House. So like, what do sellers do that are selling many different channels like myself? Are they going to the platform, compiling that information?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of sellers right now, what they're doing, if you're not using any kind of software, you're probably doing this in Excel, and it's probably taking a long time. If you are wanting to use a service like TaxJar, what I'd recommend is taking a look at the specific channels you sell, and we also do Walmart as well. Certain channels will collect the sales tax for you. So for example, Jet is one of those. where you don't have to worry about sales tax collection because Jet is a merchant of record. But all the other places where you sell, I would look at where your top sales come from, connect those to TaxJar. If we don't have an integration, let us know because we're always working on new ones. And then anything else that you want to move into TaxJar, we have CSV capabilities, or we have
that Skubana integration.
Let's do it. Let's do it. So if you have any kind of development resources, you can use the API to get all your information there as well. And we're also coming soon with a bunch of ERP integrations. So we're trying to get as many as we can, but let us know if you're specifically looking for one that we don't carry. We're supporting. So this
just real quick, there's a question. Steve Graham just said, hey, define economic presence. What was it again? Transactions or revenue? Just so I can put it into the chat box.
What significant presence for Nexus?
Economic presence, yeah, for Nexus.
It depends on every single state. So it's really a threshold of revenue and or a threshold of transactions. There's some states that only have a revenue threshold. So take a look at our blog, break down every single state, all of the thresholds. Or if you want to use the transactions check, plug it in, we'll tell you exactly what applies to your business. So you never filed a sales tax return before and kind of are wondering what this looks like. Here's an example of filing in California. So this, as I mentioned earlier, that state rate breaks down to different counties, cities, municipal districts. That's how they want you to file it back. So this is an example on the left of what it would be like to file in California. And then if you use a service like TaxJar, this is an example of our report, how it pretty much matches exactly the same. And we'll show you, here's what we need to do. You can copy and paste. And then if you'd like for an additional fee, we will file it completely for you so you never have to worry about it. So we'll talk about that later, but that's just a typical kind of preview of what you're looking at when you're filing sales tax, especially as a large volume seller. So common challenges, things that kind of trip up merchants when they're getting started with this. The first thing is not collecting tax on every channel. So if you are collecting sales tax due to Amazon FBA, make sure that you not only have your seller central settings selected, but you're also collecting sales tax in those states on every other channel you sell. So if you're selling on Walmart and Etsy and Amazon, all those, you should be collecting sales tax across all those channels in the same exact states. So the Nexus is state or business specific, not channel specific. And then the last thing people run into is when they register in a bunch of states and get started, and then they get overwhelmed by the amount of time it takes to file. You never filed a return before, and keeping up with all the different due dates. So definitely recommend leaning on the tool. So want to do a quick kind of overview of what TaxJar does. Again, we want to simplify everything. We want to make e-commerce easier. And we're doing that by solving sales tax. So what we do for you is, next slide. Oh, well, I think I get to it in the end, but we take a break. These slides are one slide out of the water. We just take a break here and say, how are you feeling? Because this is overwhelming, it's frustrating, and we want to make sure to let you know that we're going to show you to make it all pretty much go away. You want to keep going. So most people come to us with this exact thing. I want sales tax to go away, and we get it. We understand it. We're probably the only ones that enjoy talking about sales tax, but we understand that you don't want to talk about sales tax. So we'll show you how to get it away. So as I mentioned earlier, head in the sand is not a great option. So this may have been, how you've been approaching sales tax in the past, but given what's going on with Supreme Court and the states getting hungrier, we really recommend that you kind of accept sales tax as part of doing business and figure out a way to put it behind you so you're not, having a sales tax headache is what we call it. You're thinking about, what do you guys do as TaxJar? How can you help me? You can get set up in minutes. So here's a quote from one of the sellers that used us. I reached out, you got set up in minutes. It was the easiest process. I'm going to show you what we do and how that works, but just know that, this may be overwhelming and scary and confusing, but we can help you make all of that super, super easy and just get you set up in minutes so that you can just forget about this completely.
And just quick tidbit on news. I don't know if you heard that Movement Watch was actually sold to Movado Group.
Yeah, we were really proud of them.
Yeah, it was really interesting news that hit recently.
Yeah, so they're a huge seller and they got set up in minutes, so likely you can too. So here's what TaxJar actually does and how we can help you. So what do we do for your business? So the first thing I talked about was we centralize all that information. So we call this a multi-channel dashboard, where you bring all of your information into a single place. You connect all of your providers to TaxJar once, and then we automatically pull in all that information for you. So you never have to worry about exporting CSVs from different channels or manually, hashing with data, anything like that. We're going to save you hours on your returns by providing fully automated sales tax remittance with our AutoFile product. So that's never having to copy and paste our information from TaxJar over to the state's website. You just tell us, hey, TaxJar, you handle it. And every time we file on time, get you that early discount if it's available, and we get you squared away so you never have to worry about managing that. We also, if you're a developer on this call or you're working with a custom part, we offer real-time sales tax calculations at your point of sale. So if you are looking for more management than on the collection side, we have an API that helps you do with that. But essentially, what we do is put your sales tax on autopilot. So we help you just say, hey, lean on us as automation for sales tax, and you never have to worry about it again.
There's a lot of questions coming in. We're going to save them for the Q&A at the end, so you will get some of your questions answered.
Sure. Awesome. So this is what I talked about. We'll go through this really quickly, but you connect all of the e-commerce providers to TaxJar. The logos you see here on the screen, I mentioned them in e-commerce, I think I forgot as well. But you connect them all to TaxJar once. We create a dashboard for you to see all of your states, so you'll see how much you have collected in every state. If you are collecting, if you haven't, we also show you your sales tax liability. So this is where if you're not collecting and you want to see, okay, where do I stand? Like, about how much sales tax should I have collected in California? We'll tell you that.
And this is where you can actually potentially see what, if you're not following today, what your risk is.
Yep, we'll put a little Amazon FBA badge during or on any of the states where we are saying you may have Nexus due to Amazon FBA, giving you that information again for you to make a decision on when or if you want to collect. And then from that dashboard, you click on any of the specific states. So you click into a state, for example, California, and we show you that report that basically models exactly what the state wants you to file in the format. So we'll break all of your information, all of your sales down by city, county, jurisdiction, way more detailed than something like a zip code rate. This is just the way to get it done accurately. And you can use this to either, again, file with AutoFile, which is our automated service, or file on your own if you don't want to. So the last part, this is our kind of most loved feature and most popular feature is AutoFile. So we fully automate your sales tax. And so you'll log into your dashboard if you're using AutoFile, and we'll just tell you, hey, your return is going to be filed by this date. And we upload a copy of return into your history of your account. And if you ever want to look at it, you can. If you never want to look at it, we get it. And it's really great. The last thing I recommend, I just want to point this out one more time, is that Economic Nexus is new and confusing, but we want to make sure it's simple and easy to understand. So if you're wondering where you stand on this, use the Sales Information Checker. Again, it's completely free. It just enables you to see exactly where you stand in just a few minutes. And so last things, a few things about TaxJar. If you haven't heard of us, if you don't know who we are, we're the highest rated sales tax solution anywhere. So you can look at any of the channels. If you sell on a Shopify store, for example, go check out the Shopify reviews. If you sell on Amazon, check out the Amazon Solutions Partner Network. We have hundreds of reviews on there. Customers love us. We really were built for multi-channel e-commerce, and this is really what sets us apart as our technology from any of the other providers that offer sales tax management, is the fact that we were built on a modern tech stack where we have developers that develop everything that we do in-house. So when things like Economic Nexus happen, we're able to, in just a matter of weeks, come out with something like the Sales and Transactions Checker. So our software is new, it's adaptable, we're always adding new integrations. And then lastly, a lot of things you see if you read through our reviews online is about our support. Sales tax is scary, and we want to be the ones that be able to help you understand it. And so we call it truly human support. So we have different plans, but if you've ever talked to our email support team, they're amazing. If you ever called in and talked to us, we're customer focused, and we want to make sure that sales tax is easy and we're saving you time. So those are 3 great reasons to choose.
Yeah, and this slide reminds me of a Skubana slide at the same time. Like I feel like we share that same ethos. So good to know.
Awesome. Yep. Well, that's why we work together. And you're in good company. So these are some of the brands that I'm proud to say that are TaxJar customers. And there's some links as well to our review networks as well.
Cool.
So, And then if you're looking for more resources, again, I've talked about our blog a lot. We have the highest or most visited sales tax blog on the internet. So we're really proud because we love sales tax. We also have a Facebook community. Many of you maybe have seen the promotion around this webinar within that sales tax community. It's over 9,000 followers. There's a lot of CPAs in there. So if you have questions, it's not just TaxJar customers, it's just anyone talking about e-commerce sales tax. And then our YouTube channel as well. We have a ton of videos on there. So if it's something's tricky, check out our YouTube channel, see if there's video on it. If not, let us know. We'll try to make one on it. But it's a lot easier to digest that way. And then if you're wondering how much TaxJar costs, we have 2 plans that help you get started. So we have like a pay-as-you-go plan called TaxJar Basic. It starts at $17 a month on an annual plan. And this allows you to connect to as many channels as you want, see all of your reports for every state, and really kind of a DIY option. This is separate from an auto file price. So auto file, depending on how many states you're filing in, the price ranges, but it's around $20 to $25. And that will help you kind of manage it on your own. If you're a larger business, if you're looking for more support, we offer TaxJar Plus. TaxJar Plus is a lot better at kind of go live technical support, onboarding. So if you're a heavy developer and looking for management there, or if you're doing a ton of transactions and really need more hand holding as you get started, I would strongly recommend TaxJar Plus. So if you go to our website, you can talk to someone on our Plus team, or you can sign up for Basic and never talk to anyone and be on your way.
Cool. People are saying they love your blog.
Yeah, awesome. Great to hear. So I kind of already talked about this. TaxJar Plus is for large multi-channel, high-growth brands. TaxJar Basic is for you if you just kind of want like a DIY solution and are ready to go.
Sure. And for me as facilitator, I'm all about creating community and building an audience and educating, which is why we want to have this webinar together, is to educate people so they know how to handle their tax liability. And so we, like I said earlier, we put on this conference called Skubana Accelerate, or it's just called Accelerate, skubana.com/accelerate. It's an extremely tactical workshop, hands-on, where I'm bringing out some of the largest brands and merchants that sell both on Shopify or on Amazon or both simultaneously. You can check out the agenda at skubana.com/accelerate. We have a $250 off bonus right there with that link. You can even use my initials of my name, CR. If you have questions about it, you can email me at chad@skubana.com. If you want to know more information, it's October 3rd in New York City. So if you're in New York, please come join us. It's going to be amazing and very, very hands-on.
Awesome. Yep, and that's our contact there. If you have any questions about TaxJar, what we do, or sales tax questions, again, I'll stress, if you have a specific business consult you're looking for questions on, I recommend you look at our footer and reach out to one of our sales tax pros. But if there's any questions on our service and what we can do, please reach out to support at TaxJar, and you'll hear back usually within.
So there are. Should we go through like maybe 3 questions, and I can send you some of the questions after this to get deeper?
Yeah.
Does that work? So let's see here. We talked about TaxJar Plus already. How about the TaxJar certification? Add reseller certificate management to TaxJar Plus?
Yeah, it's a feature we're working on. So handling certificates and exemptions management. It's something we don't have today, but it's definitely on our roadmap. So if that's something you're looking for, just send us a note to support and we'll put you on the list. So that way when we come out with it, we'll send you an email and let you know.
Somebody asked, will TaxJar be organizing, that's the same thing. How do you manage the county state level on Amazon for orders? Does Amazon pick the percentage when a customer orders since it's a pass-through tax?
Yeah, so Amazon actually, so you don't have to worry about the collection specifically with Amazon, because Amazon has their own sales tax API that collects the right amount. So if you just enable it within Seller Central, they will know exactly if it's destination, if it's origin, if it's shipping. All the taxability rules are built into Amazon. So what TaxJar does is just pulls in what was collected from Amazon, and then we'll map it out to all the information on how you need it to file. So if you're wondering if you need to figure out any kind of how to collect on Amazon, you don't. It's all built in. They actually charge you a little bit. They upcharge you on the sales tax in order to provide that service.
Awesome. I want to thank you so much for dropping this knowledge that you've spent years accumulating. Very, very grateful. So thank you so much. And looking forward to having Skubana and TaxJar connect so we can enable tax collection across all the channels I sell in.
Yeah, definitely. We love that. And thanks for having us. Again, it's overwhelming a little bit if this is the first time you're hearing about sales tax, but please lean on us, lean on all of our content, lean on the blog, as someone mentioned, because we try to break it down. Our goal is to really make it easy and understandable. So thanks for having us.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.